Knowing who your parents are in this day and age and having a real relationship with them can almost seem out of the norm. And even more so if a child knows their grandparent. And why is that? For many of us, as we raise our kids, our parents can be sometimes kind of stressful. And more inside of culture, we're encouraged to avoid people who stress us out. But doing that with our parents just seems like a dark place to be. And that's why we're going to talk about that next on the Celebrate Kids podcast in our daily segment, Facing the Dark. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
Dr. Kathy, a recent Pew Research Center study on parents' attitudes towards their upbringings suggests that conflict between parents and grandparents might be what they call unavoidable. Of the 3,700 parents that were surveyed, 44% said that they intended to raise their own kids differently from the way that their parents had cared for them. Conversely, 43% said they would adopt an approach similar to their own parents. The main idea in which they hoped to deviate concerned kind of love and relationships. So, Dr. Kathy, this is so interesting to me. Kind of growing up, my own grandparents told my parents that they weren't really babysitters. Now, flash forward 20 years, and my parents have our kids nearly every 3 days so that my wife and I can go and do different things like clean the house and go on dates and those kind of things, adulting things. When we look at child rearing, is the phrase, "it takes a village," really something that we should consider? Or is there kind of an importance and value of kind of locking the family down and really raising our kids the way that we've kind of determined them to be raised?
Well, I don't like the idea of parents outsourcing parenting. So in that way, I don't like the village statement. In other words, we hire a piano teacher, we send them to a soccer camp, we send them to Sunday school, they go to, gymnastics at the Y. None of that is horribly bad. However, what becomes a problem, in my opinion, is where the parent gives away everything and says to the church and to the school and to the, piano teacher, do your job so I can just, take a long soak and eat my bonbons. And most parents are not doing that, but some are. Some are, frankly, lazy and choosing to let other people do their work. So do I think that parents ought to have a support system? Absolutely. I don't know how people do it today who don't have a group of people who they can call in times of need because of trauma and tragedy or being overwhelmed or being confused or a sick parent and I've got to go across, the country for a while, whatever the case may be. So you're blessed to have the parents you have. I think you're smart to prioritize your wife, your relationship, and the sanity that you have in a quiet home when all your kids are gone for a little bit. But you're also not giving up the parenting role. You're just asking for some support. So I think there's a real difference there.
That's really great. I think that parents and community members, like you said, are kind of really a great support for families. But I'm also guessing that there are nuances in how they approach things and how we might kind of approach things in our own family. What are some important conversations or values that we should hold to and maybe even kind of pass along to those that we kind of allow into our family to help us kind of mentor or watch or encourage our kids? What might be some of those conversations or ideals that we should hold to as we bring other adults in to kind of walk through this sense of guiding these young people that are in our homes with us?
Yeah, first of all, know who you're inviting in, and walk with them a while. I don't think we allow anyone to have access to our kids who we haven't seen in different circumstances. We haven't seen them behave with different people, whether that be a peer group, people younger or older than them. I think the first time that, I would have maybe a new babysitter or a mentor over, I would probably hang out. I probably wouldn't hire a new babysitter and then leave the house. I'd probably invite a potential new babysitter over for game night and movie night and dinner and see how they relate and how do they fit in and do they appear to have a similar understanding of how children are talked to, et cetera. So we need to be really careful and make sure. And it all starts, Wayne, with what in the heck are my values? Do I know what I'm doing? Do I know why I'm doing what I do? If I value gratitude and I want to raise my children to not be entitled, entitlement is one of the most dangerous things in our culture today, where people think they just have a right to whatever they want when they want it and just leave me alone. If I want to raise my kids up to be grateful and to be purposeful and to be meaningfully participating and to own responsibility for things, then I'm not going to let other people hang out with them a lot who don't believe that, for fear the kids are going to start wanting to listen to the cool person rather than listening to, mom or dad. I think when it comes to grandparents, it's extremely important that we talk to our parents about what they are and are not allowed to say. If a parent does something the grandparent doesn't like, and the grandparent lets the kids know that, now you're in a bad place. Because now the kids have a choice to say, well, I'm not going to do it because grandma said that was a really stupid idea. So if grandparents and aunts and uncles and older siblings want to have an invested relationship, they have to figure out what they have a right to talk about. They are not the parents, they are the grandparents. And they have to learn when to keep their mouth shut and how to communicate. And I hear it from both sides of the coin, Wayne. I have so many parents complain to me about their adult children, and I have so many parents complain to me about their parents. And it's just difficult. So when do we talk and when do we keep our mouth shut? And if you don't follow the policy here, our policy is that you will not talk to our children about your alternative religion. And if we find out that you have talked with them about why you have given up on your faith in the God of the Bible, we will have to set up a stricter boundary, because we will not allow you to influence our children away from the God of the Bible. We want you to love them. We want them to love you. But this is a boundary I have a right as a dad to place into it.
Yeah, I think that's really an important conversation and a really challenging and maybe even impossible conversation to have sometimes. I mean, it's everything from, like you said, kind of faith formation to even things like hockey. I mean, there's a lot of grandparents that I've talked to who are wrestling with their own kids about, how do I talk to my child about this challenge that I see in their road? And it kind of leads me to this other question that I have with, what would you say to parents who maybe have experienced kind of maybe some trauma or other challenges with their parents in the past? I mean, I can imagine that it's really hard to move forward in allowing others to influence or even disciple your children as they become teens and young adults. But do you have advice for those of us who have had maybe kind of a hard time with our parents? Maybe they don't understand or see eye to eye. I mean, having those initial conversations are really, I think, helpful. But is there more that we should be processing, especially if we have some trauma or maybe even kind of on a lighter note, some challenges in our past?
Yeah, for sure. I think we look for, what's the regular rhythm? Was mom, dad, or were my parents having an off day? Like, did they just come off of a road trip and they were exhausted, or did dad's best friend just have a stroke and he's so upset and therefore he behaved, critically and rushed Johnny and made Johnny feel really badly? So was there a one and done, kind of an off day concept? It's very different from a regular rhythm of disrespect, a regular rhythm of a critical, irresponsible kind of a nature. So that's what I would encourage parents and grandparents to do, looking at both sides of the family tree, if you will. Is it a consistent problem, or was it a one and done? And if it's consistent, then you have a right to the boundary. You have a right to say, Dad, I'm so sorry, but I just can't allow you to have influence over the kids right now. You're not in a healthy space. They're impressionable. They love you. And we've asked you to follow our rules about diet and sleep and conversation, and you've chosen not to. And the consequence for your choice to dishonor us is that we have to separate for a season. And I think that's language. The consequence for your choice to dishonor us is that we're going to set up this boundary. Now, Dad, we hope it's not forever. We're going to be watching. And then what I think we do, Wayne, is when it's appropriate and when we have the emotional energy to do so, we invite our parents out for dinner without the kids, and have you change. And are you suffering enough? Do you want the grandkids back enough that you're willing to believe us? What questions do you have for me that you need answered so that you can respect my policies in my home? I think that's what we try to do. We try to see if there's been any change. And then we grieve well. I know of so many people in this very situation. And I just would say to you with integrity, grieve well. And I would say with respect, and I hope this comes across right, go find a kid in your church who needs a grandma and be a substitute grandma. I know of some families who have moved across country and they're not close to any biological relatives anymore. And they have looked in their churches for elderly people who would love to be surrogate grandparents, who come to birthday parties, who come to piano recitals, who come to soccer games, who sit in the church and listen to the children's choir. And it's beautiful. It's not the same but it's beautiful. And we can do that. We can offer to be that when we see loneliness, and we can ask people to step into that space when we know that it would be good for us and our kids.
You know, the Bible has a lot to say about parents, and it has a lot to say also about grandparents. One of my favorite passages actually comes out of Proverbs 17, and it's just one verse, verse 6. It says, "Children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children." You know, for many of us, we might not think that we make our children proud. But I think as Dr. Kathy talked today, what we get a glimpse of is that children love parents who are involved. And children love when adults are involved in their lives, especially seniors. There's something that happens for young people when the elders in a community welcome them in. Doing that is something that we believe really celebrates kids. And it's a bright light in this cultural moment that doesn't seem to value children very well. So we hope that this has been an encouragement for you to go out and celebrate kids, be active and involved in their lives, and bring elders into your community. But as Dr. Kathy said, do it with prudence. For all of us here at the Celebrate Kids team, I want to say thanks for listening. My name is Wayne Stender, and Dr. Kathy and I are really looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.